All right, so taking a look at lesson number 2, talking about trigonometric functions of general angles. So when we talk about trigonometry, we're talking about the side ratios on a right triangle specifically. Um, and we're looking at this little square right there represents a 90 degrees. Okay, and then we can label our angles in a few different ways. We can use Greek letters like theta here, or we can use capital letters like A, B, and C in order to represent those angles. Now, when we talk about trigonometric functions, we are talking about the side ratio. So how does the hypotenuse, which is always across from the 90 degrees, how does that compare to the other two sides? Right? How do those compare to each other? How do the sides compare to each other? Okay, so now depending on the angle I pick, so if I pick this angle on this corner, that means its opposite side would be right here, and its adjacent side is the angle that's connected to it, right? So always identify the hypotenuse first, which is across from the right angle, okay? And then once you have your angle picked, go ahead and label the opposite side, and that means there's only one left, the adjacent side, okay? Uh, Once you have those labeled, then we look at the ratios compared between any two of them, okay? And so that's where we get these words of sine, cosine, and tangent. So for sine, we just label it sin, and cosine, cos, and tangent, tan. And those represent functions of an angle. So they're always of an angle. They're always of some angle, and that represents a side ratio. So depending on what angle you have, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if I have this angle right here, sine would be this side divided by this side. But if I switched the angle and did this angle instead, this now would be the opposite side over this hypotenuse. So it all depends on the angle. That's why sine, cosine, and tangent are always of an angle. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. And then they're reciprocals, which is just flipping the fraction. Cosecant, CSC, secant, CSC, and then cotangent, COT. So sometimes these gets mixed up. So because you think cosine goes with cosecant, but it doesn't. All right, so sine goes with cosecant, cosine goes with secant. Those are the reciprocals. Okay, so if I have a triangle and I label an angle, you have to label an angle because it's always of an angle. Then you can label your three sides and you can write the ratios 12 over 13, opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, and then you can do the reciprocals, of course. So these are all dealing with a right triangle. So let's go ahead and look at an example here. We want to evaluate based on the angle. So we have a right triangle, as we can see, and we have our angle selected. So we want to find what the adjacent leg is, okay, of this angle. Okay, so what we want to do is look at that angle and label our three sides, right? So the hypotenuse, which is always across from the 90, that would be AB, okay? So AB is the hypotenuse, okay? And then I want to label the opposite side, which they kind of already give us. So if this angle opposite side would be over here, that'd be BC, which they already label us, right? And then adjacent is the last one. That would be AC, right? So AC is the adjacent. So I always start with the hypotenuse and then do the opposite and then do the adjacent. All right, so now let's label what their measures are, right? So BC, we can see, is 28. AC is 45. And our hypotenuse is AB, was 53. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the biggest, right? So there you go with example 1, finding the exact values of it. Okay, so those are the side lengths of that. And then from there, we want to go ahead and label what the 6 trig functions are. Okay, so we want to label what sine is. So sine of our angle, it's always of something, of an angle. Sine then would be opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be opposite 28 over hypotenuse 53. And then its reciprocal, cosecant of the same angle, equals 53 over 28. And we can just leave these as fractions. We don't have to do decimals. Okay, and then we have cosine of an angle, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And that would be adjacent is 45 over hypotenuse again is 53. And then we can do the reciprocal, which is secant, S-E-C, Southeastern Conference, and that is 53 over 45. Okay, and then we can do tangent. Tangent's probably the easiest to remember, and it's reciprocal, so tangent is opposite over adjacent, which would be 28 over 45, and then its reciprocal is cotangent. So these are easy to identify. The reciprocals is adjacent over opposite, so just flip the fraction, 45 over 28. Okay, so that's how you can do it. And then remember, you can remember these main three is SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. SOHCAHTOA. So that's how you can remember it.